It is hopeless to be in the reality of poverty, the slums, the trafficking, the refugee life, all of that. But it is equally depressing when you seemingly have all the Maslow hierarchy level fulfilled and you have material comfort, yet you are hopeless enough to overdose yourself on opioids, go out and shoot innocent people, throw yourself off the building just because you have everything, like many of these A-list movie multimillionaire stars do. I think hopelessness is in every echelon of socioeconomic society.
Every week here on More Than Profit, we explore the stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors who have made a difference in the world while building successful businesses. We sit down with each guest and dive into their personal journey, their struggles and triumphs, and the lessons they've learned along the way. On this episode, we chat with Ilaria Chan, a global keynote speaker and private investor who serves on the boards of several humanitarian organizations. Ilaria shares her journey from investment banking to culinary school and her current work in the tech industry. She discusses the importance of understanding different realities and the drive to promote human flourishing. And she emphasizes the need to acknowledge and address global issues, bridging the gap between the East and the West. Throughout our conversation, Ilaria's compassion, intelligence, and hope shine through, inspiring us to make a meaningful impact in the world.
Brian, a movie a couple of years that came out, it was all the craze. My wife loved it. I enjoyed it. It was hilarious. Crazy Rich Asians. It was good. It was funny. I've spent a little bit of time in Southeast Asia. Recently had a chance to go to Singapore and loved it. Yeah, I don't know. Have you spent much time in Southeast Asia?
I have a little bit, not very much, but I did see the movie, and I have to say, it's probably within my top 20 movies.
Our guest today is Ilaria Chan, and we've been friends for several years now. I've always been super impressed with her professional life and what she's been able to accomplish. And her resume is so impressive. In fact, when I first met her, I was intimidated by her just because she has done so much in investment banking, working with startups, working with large scale companies. She's a force to be reckoned with, but she's also at the same time just so accessible and so present, always asks really good questions. And so I think there's something about Ilaria I've always been really interested in, because her ability to do unbelievable things and talk at such a high level in industry and in business, but at the same time to really relate with people across the table one-on-one. Her skills in that area, I think, are just unmatched. So,
and I think just for listeners, so Ilaria, give where you're raised. I mean, even because I know you went to boarding school, and just some of your background.
Of course. And you guys were just way over generous with your intro, which is fine by me. I was born in Hong Kong, raised there till I was 13, and boarding school in UK, college in the States. And my first job was investment banking with Goldman Sachs in New York on the trading floor. And was the era of taking Asian companies public, but mainly Chinese companies like Alibaba, Tencent, Agricultural Bank of China, the era of globalization where US and China love each other still. Probably took a break mid-career, quit the job, moved to San Francisco into culinary school. I love the food industry and just want to understand the hardship behind it. I know it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, cleaning up kitchen and cutting up animal carcasses and understanding the roughness of it. And I started doing volunteering work too with the homeless community in San Francisco, and traveled the world at that time with a few nonprofits that I later very luckily was able to join the board after understanding their work. And then I joined a tech company in 2017 called Grab. And it was a time when I picked up some public speaking and also private investments with my own family. But the company Grab, that is now public. It's kind of like an Uber, PayPal, DoorDash, all meshed in one, and present in 8 countries in Southeast Asia, headquartered in Singapore. And the founder and I were leading a Bible study together, and they were about to go public. And he just kindly gave me a chance to join the company and learn the tech business from scratch. And here I am. I'm still with the company, but later evolved into being an advisor, looking at public affairs. And now I'm the chairwoman of their think tank called Tech for Good Institute, which we founded in 2021 when we went public on NASDAQ. We're just trying to bring together public-private sectors in Southeast Asia to use tech for the good of the countries. I live in the US now with my family, and I split my time between the think tank, or in a few boards and humanitarian organizations, venture capital, and international trade. Anyway, a bit of a mutt in everything.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, super impressive. I mean, in the midst of that, I mean, I think your bio is so impressive, but the things that I love too are just the fact that you left Goldman Sachs and you went to culinary school, which I haven't had a chance to partake, but Brian said one time he was at your house and you just whipped up this unbelievable dinner.
so you had Costco fish. I can't think, it was like, Laura would know. And it was blackened.
Chilean sea bass, I think.
Yes. Yes. And it was one of those things where I'm like, it was some of the best fish I ever had. And I've had a lot of fish over the years, but yeah, it's interesting to me where I've met successful people like you who have done a stint of culinary school, which I think is really weird. But I just also think, I think rich people can make choices like that. Like they can go, hey, I'm going to take a year off, learn to do something I really want to do. And you never cooked though. Like you never worked anywhere cooking.
No, and I wouldn't recommend it unless, you know.
No, nobody. Oh, it's the hardest job in the world. It's really,
It is hard, underpaid, overworked, and you get cuts and burns everywhere. It's truly tough, and people expect your dish to be perfect because the temperature and all that. So it made me have a lot of respect for people who work for us, you know, in kitchens and restaurants and waiters and waitresses. But yeah, it's rough. We have it easy.
Especially when people hear all that you're doing. What's your driver? What pushes you to, because in my mind, I mean, I met you on the Great Wall of China 100 years ago, it seems like, with Thomas Kim. And I laugh going, it's like you said, I mean, Bryce, like I was not intimidated by you. I was afraid of you, but that was for different reasons. But it was that thing going, you're just so driven. And I'm like, you also come from pain like all of us do. And you have a story behind it all. And I'm just like, so if you were to tell listeners what drives you, what would you say it is?
So I think I'm in my 40s now. So I would say the first half of my life, everything in the Crazy Rich Asian movie is true. I'm not saying I'm a crazy Asian. I wouldn't say I'm a crazy rich Asian.
No, that's not true, but yes.
Yeah, 2/3 of it is true. But it's true. I mean, a lot of the caricature in the movie is about the unrealistic parental and societal expectations of you that lead you to behave in this ridiculous way to have to perform for society. And because Asia has billions of people, right? India, China makes up 2.6 billion, and then you have 680 million in Southeast Asia, not to mention the rest. So when you're in a compact, high population, high density place, everything is just scaled and sensationalized and, you know, exaggerated. So you don't have space. You have people on top of each other, constantly scrutinizing each other, and you have high risk for discrepancy. So I would say the first half of my life, I was very privileged to be born in well-to-do families. So I behaved in a way that was just, you know, all about the accolades. And that was conducive to actually living a very fulfilling and wholesome and wisdom-filled life. So I think when I went to college, and that was Stanford, I was shocked because almost all of the best friends I made in college at that time were all on financial aid, and they were smarter than me, driven than me, more wholesome than me, could take on the world more than me. And I could barely, know how to read the road signs in US. This is a funny story. There was a similar guy, Asian guy, who also similar background from me, was there at his first week at Stanford. I think he put a dish in the microwave at the cafeteria, closed it, and just waited. And nothing happened after a few minutes. And his classmate had to say, like, you actually have to press buttons to heat up your food, because he's never lifted a finger his whole life. I'm not as bad, because I absolutely not like that. But that's the ridiculousness of living in countries where you can actually hire full-time help to live in your house to cook and clean for you for the price of like 500 US a month, which is unheard of if you compare it to the West. So anyway, all to say, I think the first half of my life, superficial titles and accolades meant a lot to me, which also is quite common in the Asian community, because people make fun of Asian moms saying that, are you married? What job do you have? Are you a doctor? If not, go away. But I think, the second half of my life, especially halfway through Goldman Sachs, when I made vice president, and that was right after financial crisis, was you kind of start to see the futility of it, and you can choose to ignore it, or you really understand what's going on. And I was like, wow, like I have people I respect were getting fired. I know people who jump off the building, which people were doing at that time in New York. And here I am, I was 28. I was like, is this? And then I was trying to bring companies public that I know it's they're just kind of sketchy. I'm like, why would you tell people to put their lives? Because all of these big investors, institutional investors out there, they manage the money of everyday people, the pensions of them. So decisions made at Wall Street were controlling the destiny of voiceless everyday people on the main street. And so anyway, I didn't know all of that. At that time, I just thought I got to get out of here. So there was no crystal ball. I just wanted to get out of there. I loved the food industry. I went from consuming nice food at restaurants to thinking I should learn how it's made. And then I didn't realize I signed up for the toughest vocational school that you have to get up at 4 a.m. and go strip down the kitchen, clean up animal carcasses and lift stock pots that are half your body weight. I signed up for that without knowing. I thought, maybe I just put on an apron and, roast a chicken and take a picture and go home after 2 hours. But no, I did the other way. And I was in the middle of Tenderloin in San Francisco. So in the morning, you walk through people who pull down their pants and shoot up drugs. And you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? In hindsight, I loved that year and a half. None of that came from planning. It came from stumbling across things, for sure, for me.
Well, and I think that kind of defines our earlier years. And you just said you're entered the 40s. And so how do you find yourself making decisions about what you give yourself and your time to moving forward? Because time is precious and you have a child now and different things that, just as a family person, those experiences shape and shift kind of how you think about the world and what you're able to give your time to. So how do you choose to say yes to this Stanford thing versus this other thing? Like what in your day to day, what is your driving decision maker as you're taking on these new roles?
Yeah, I do think, learning to say no is increasingly important.
You don't say, I've never seen you say no. I mean, I'm sure you do, but
just not to you. You're quite hard to say no to.
Okay.
But I would say it's important to define what's important to a person first. And then if things that come your way falls into that category, then it's easy to say yes. And the things that don't, we should say no to. So for me, there are two main themes. One is I do like work that connects and bridges, the East and the West, because I am a product of the best of the East and West, I think, during the globalization era. The other part is I want my work to help people in different sectors promote human flourishing. So especially for people who are voiceless, really. So it could be in the forms of humanitarian work. It could be in the form of, tech investments that can bring up the lower class and the middle class. It could be work that is, there's a real estate company in the UK that really tries to reinvent space to allow more people to be united and to have activity that community builds. So if anything that falls into the category of those two areas I talked about, I would definitely consider them at the stage of my life.
Miss Joyce Monty is a model citizen in many ways. She's diligent, hardworking, disciplined, and resilient, with a sensible demeanor that comes from having to pick herself up and push through life's challenges. On a typical day, she attends a digital literacy class through her jobs program at the Louisville Urban League. After a long day, she enjoys working on her Tanzanian crochet projects and watching Disney cartoons she bought for a steal at the local Goodwill. Yet despite her warm spirit and can-do attitude, Joyce has experienced numerous setbacks, missed opportunities, and a lack of chances she deserves. As prudent and meticulous as Joyce was through all her medical issues and life's events, she couldn't anticipate the complexities of the benefit system. When she received assistance, she entered a complicated and opaque system with various income limitations and qualifications. Those receiving benefits must make sure they have enough income to pay their bills, but not so much income that they lose their benefits. The impending disqualification based on income for someone receiving benefits is called the benefit cliff. The National Conference of State Legislators defines a benefit cliff, or the cliff effect, as a sudden and often unexpected decrease in public benefits that can occur with a small increase in earnings. For people like Joyce, the risk of being left suddenly and completely without housing, food, or medical care benefits can come with as little as a $5 or $10 difference in earnings. Leap Fund, a startup established in 2018, develops tools, education, and data for the public benefit, serving direct service, employment, and policy sectors nationwide. Their focus is on providing immediate solutions to address benefit cliffs, while also advocating for policy changes to eliminate these issues in the future. They have seen workers across the country turn down income that they have earned at their jobs out of fear of hitting the benefits cliff. This tool also provides a sense of empowerment by providing the clarity needed to advocate with employers for better pay or benefits that support a vulnerable workforce desperately trying to bridge into better opportunities when the inevitable benefit cliff does appear. What once was a scary and unknown situation can now be navigated with confidence. If you or someone you know is facing a benefit cliff and don't know where to start, or if you're a community-based organization that desires to improve the tools with which you serve your clients, check out myleapfund.com today. And now back to the episode.
You know, you mentioned kind of some of your travels, that year and a half you kind of took off and did the culinary experience. I have to imagine walking the Tenderloin and seeing people actively using drugs is profound and impactful. Just thinking about the other person, this human being that you're walking by, doing those sorts of things to themselves. And then other things like trafficking that you've experienced in South. Are there some moments maybe in that year and a half or that have really given you a passion and a drive, like specific moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this exists in the world that I live in?
I think so. One of the things I did was I was doing one-on-one coaching for high school dropouts to get their GEDs. And I remember there was this Hispanic teenager, and she would come to a couple of classes and she's very sweet, but then she would also be super flaky, and half the time she wouldn't show up. And one of the times her excuse or reason was like, oh, my boyfriend was shot on the streets. And it was true. I believed her, but I just found it to be so ridiculous. That is her reality, and my reality is my reality. More importantly, though, I think when I went to visit the slums of India a few years ago to understand the economics of traffickers, because one of the nonprofits that I was on the board of is trying to rehabilitate children and young people who were rescued from these traffickers and abusers. So we need to know how it all started. And I walked through the largest slum, the Dharavi slum in Mumbai, and I just saw how people lived. And when you sit there with feces and all that stuff rolling beneath your shoes, and then you have kids just sitting on that river of crap and playing with each other, and their parents are out there trying to hustle to sell nuts to tourists, who are walking by the street, you just like wonder, like, wow, how is this their reality as well? But more importantly, why is there such a vibrant system to take advantage of these people? And the brilliance, actually, of a lot of people who are criminals and masterminds behind these atrocious events that create victims out of innocent people. It all comes from money. It all comes from hurt people. So they hurt people. And it comes from a system that perpetuates the haves and have-nots. So there are different levels, right? You can go help and rescue victims, but you can also try to take a step to prevent some of these things by providing better alternatives. And then there's a whole system where you try to influence people at the top who are creating these situations in the first place, where the economy has such huge rich poor discrepancy, so that people are poor enough that they will dump their kids and sell their kids and live in this perpetual squalor where they cannot get out of. So then I realized a very small percentage of us get to traverse between these different universes at the same time.
Maybe get to or really take the time and effort to do it. Because I do think there's an element where life is hard for pretty much everybody. I mean, like there's just a harshness to life, and people are suffering in different ways. And I think so, therefore we kind of, in a sense, want to almost shelter us from additional pain. And so we don't even allow ourselves to see when those things are occurring in the world. Because I'm hearing you talk about your experiences, and like there's two quite profound for me. We were in New York one time, my wife and I, and we were part of this entrepreneurship program for people that were coming out of the prison system. And they do this exercise where in the room they ask you, like, okay, who of you grew up with gunshots every night on the street? And you have the one side of the Bryce Butlers of the world, and you have the other side of folks that are coming out of prison. And literally everybody on the side that are coming out of prison raising their hands that they had a friend that was killed when they were growing up, or a family member that was in prison, or heard gunshots every night. And it just has an unbelievably profound impact on you, because like that's not my experience. things happened around me when I was growing up, but I didn't grow up with gunshots every night. That's our reality. And that's what drives me in a sense. And I think it's similar to you as well, to kind of change that.
It is. And also, when I talk about that, there's so many levels where you can try to make an impact. And I use the word try because I realize that it's actually very minimal what I can do. In many ways, like in the developed world, whether it's nonprofits or charities trying to go help people, we actually realize like there's so much more that we don't know. And we're not the saviors. We're just people who are trying to learn a bit more and hopefully make a little difference if we could, but we don't know that. I think at the end of the day, everyone just wants to live, your podcast is called More Than Profit. We all want to live a meaningful life that is fulfilling, that is more than about ourselves. But it also juxtaposed against the harshness of reality, which is, competition, the importance of money, status, all of that, right? And how do we try to be productive, but also live a very meaningful life? And if we're lucky enough to be able to have resources and also be exposed to areas and avenues where we can try to help people, that's bingo, bingo, bingo. And I think that when you ask me what drives me, I just want to live an interesting life. I just want, before I die, before I die, if I play the video of my whole life, I just want to be like, oh, I've just used every cent of my energy and what I have to try to live the best life I could and not have any ounce of energy left over. And bam, I can go see God after that.
It's funny because I'm sitting here, like probably all the other listeners, depressed by both your conversations, going, gosh, this world is, why even living? But I do think to both of you, I mean, especially Ilaria, where I do think it's important for people of power and means and those things to actually immerse themselves in these different situations where it's like going to Guatemala and actually experiencing people living in slums, or, and only because we can't fix everything. And I think for me, sometimes my response is going, if I don't acknowledge it, then I don't have to deal with it. But those people are dealing with it every day. And you just go, I don't know, like if like trafficked or all that stuff going, I don't know if we'll ever see an end to poverty, an end to homelessness, all those other things in our lifetimes. But I do think I think we're all of us have a role to play as a human to at least try to acknowledge it in going, what's our contribution? Because you're not going to solve the problem, but you could be on a board, or you could give money, or you can give time, you can, those things. But I do think it's soul sucking. I do think it's important for all of us to partake in the misery of it. I just think, I sometimes go, Ilaria, how do you not let it consume you? Because, you've got your son at home, your husband, and I mean, you have good things going on in your life, but you go, the problems are, I mean, it's even the China-American issue right now. You go, it's all so consuming. So how do you just have a attitude of going, all that's true, but there's still joy in the world?
It is, but I love to double click on your comment because affluence. Have you guys watched The Hunger Games before? Those movies? Do you remember the part when the richest people in the capital had to eat pills so that they could throw up, so they could gorge themselves again on the good food? I think that's a great reflection of the rich world. And I lump all of us in all of it, right? It is hopeless to be in the reality of poverty, the slums, the trafficking, the refugee life, all of that. But it is equally depressing when you seemingly have all the Maslow hierarchy level fulfilled and you have material comfort, yet you are hopeless enough to overdose yourself on opioids, go out and shoot innocent people, throw yourself off the building just because you have everything, like many of these A-list movie multimillionaire stars do. I think hopelessness is in every echelon of socioeconomic society.
No, I agree.
If we can, we should, I think we should all strive to understand what is depressing and sad, and then try to not let it bring us down, but realize that we can bring hope and be hopeful in those situations. And how can you bring meaning, whether you're working with the poor or working with the rich? Because hopelessness and despondency is in both, for sure. It's actually scarier if you think you have everything and yet you don't want to live, isn't it? At least if you're a refugee, what your goal is tomorrow, I want an extra piece of bread or I want a shelter. And that actually drives you. Refugees are actually amazing people, period, because they're so driven And the moment they actually get a job somewhere, they're no longer refugees. That's actually Chobani's CEO said that because he's huge on helping refugees find employment. So I realized, wow, there's so many layers to learn. It's not the rich and poor. We're all rich and we're all poor. Like, so which areas are we blessed and have more resources just purely out of luck? You won the sperm lottery, as Warren Buffett says, just so then you have a head start in some areas. But what areas do you not have a head start and you're ignorant about? And how can we get more knowledgeable about it? Which is what I love what you guys are doing about this podcast. You're just trying to bring different people's stories from all corners of the world, to surface so that we can all learn about each other's humanity.
And I think that's the key in a sense right there, Ilaria, because it's interesting in the West specifically, we define rich as financial, right? Rich and poor is more of a financial definition. But when you step out of yourself and you go into these communities that don't necessarily have the same financial needs, there still is joy. There's struggle.
Oh, yeah.
So richness and poverty, I think, can be redefined. And that's why I even love even the conversations that some nation states are having around this idea of GDP and redefining it as gross national happiness. Like, what does it actually look like from a flourishing perspective? If we define flourishing not as the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the poor, but that we can actually all flourish in different ways, what does that actually look like for a group of people, a business, a community, a country? So then I have some hopefulness, because I think if we continue to define things as just this financial bottom line transaction, we're never going to solve it, because we're still going to have despair and loneliness and sadness and conflict.
Absolutely.
Well, I think this is the most depressing More Than Profit we've ever done. But great. Thank you for
I
this,
think it's
guys.
the most real. No. So Ilaria, with your think tank, because I know you think about this a lot, and I know that it's relatively new, your work that you've been doing kind of leading up to that with Milken and others, and then Grab and your consultant work, what are you really hoping that this institute is able to do in this world of tech for good? And where do you see kind of, number one, your role, but maybe even the institution's role in spearheading some of these East-West conversations, or kind of the role of technology and in seeing people and providing for people's felt needs instead of, these aren't bad. iPhones and different things are not bad. Facebook is not bad because it does connect people, but technology has the ability to provide so much more. What are you guys working on or thinking through as you're building this new institute?
Yeah, no, of course. And this institute there's two elements to it, a little bit like World Economic Forum and similar think tanks out there. There's a component of content that you're creating, providing all of that to educate and bring awareness to certain issues. There's a part where you're a convening platform, kind of like how you guys are, right? Where you curate people who are influential, but actually more importantly is they are stakeholders and they are important voices in that ecosystem. How do you convene and curate so that they can come together and make better decisions and advance things better, agendas better, to hopefully affect everyday people? At the end of the day, it's all about everyday people, and why people are outraged at Wall Street, at tech and Hollywood, and is because they think that very small amount of people at the top control and make decisions for the rest of the people, right? So our think tank hopes to be the convening platform, purpose-driven, intentional, effective, create good content so people understand what tech can be. And it's not just nice to have. Actually, these days, a lot of people especially in Muslim countries too, in Southeast Asia we operate, you're actually giving an avenue to earn and have a voice and have a social activity for people who maybe cannot leave their house because of religious or social reasons, or things are not safe. So for example, in Malaysia, before our app, people would get murdered because drivers who drive taxis, and it's a cash economy, right? A lot of these developing economies, at the end of the day, you have a stack of cash from your work that day. So a lot of, perpetrators would get into these cars and rob these drivers at the end of the day so they can take the cash and murder them. It's hard to trace. So when you have technology that can help these businesses go cashless, track your location, real life, and have accountability on Face ID biometrics, you're actually saving people's lives and giving people a better way to earn a livelihood, upgrade their living, upgrade their saving power, upgrade their advancement in society, etc.
And give them peace of mind that they're not going to go out and this might be the last day I go out because I've got cash. That's crazy.
And over there, half the people don't have bank accounts. And so that issue I highlighted is just one of many. And so tech is very powerful when you look at how to satisfy and meet the basic needs of people to advance their livelihood and way of living. Tech can also be a nuisance, obviously, if you just use it to indulge addictions and pastimes. So that's why right now it's very important for policymakers, tech entrepreneurs, senior executives who are really making decisions, deciding the future of the sector, to have those conversations together and make good decisions together, which is what our institute is really hoping to do, is to bring together public and private sector decision makers on these issues.
What's next for Ilaria? What do you see on the horizon? Are you happy doing what you're doing? I mean, again, you don't have to give any secrets, but what's next?
I just take life a day at a time, honestly, Brian and Bryce, because people used to love, forcing me. When I was a Goldman Sachs analyst, you have to have a 10-year plan. You have to have a 5-year plan. Fine, whatever. I made something up at that time, but did that happen? No. I went to culinary school and quit my, whatever at that time, $500,000 a year job, way overpaid job. So I think a lot of that is just kind of BS. I think we can try to have a framework to guide us on making decisions, but I just want to live a day at a time where I am investing in meaningful relationships and spending my time helping meaningful things happen. So right now, I split my time between think tank, board work, and some advisory work. So I do travel now more to speak at places where I think the community could make an impact in the areas that I care about too. So this quarter, I'll be speaking at Princeton and Stanford just because I was an alum in one, and the other one, I have an invitation from a mutual friend of ours to go speak about my entrepreneurship journey. But I am equally happy to go to China, and actually, which I will in April, to spend time with the local youth there who are losing their jobs and very sad about a lot of the developments in their economy, and understand how I could be of any use if I could to them. So there really is no plan. I just roll with it.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of More Than Profit. We hope our conversation with Ilaria has provided some inspiration for working toward human flourishing across the globe. To stay up to date with More Than Profit, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, drop us a review so others can find us as well. Don't forget to check out our new website at morethanprofit.fm, where we have additional content in past episodes. You can also learn more about what's ahead by following us on Twitter at listen_MTP. More Than Profit is a production of Access Ventures and is hosted by Bryce Butler and Brian McKay. Our executive producer is Crystal Escobar, and our associate producer is Bryn McKay. Audio production assistance is provided by Resonate Recording. Our theme song today was No Man's Land by Slapstorm. I'm Bryn McKay, and you've been listening to More Than Profit.